Hi, my name is Salema Mabena Masakela. I'll say it for you one more time. Salema Mabena Masakela. And you are listening to the What Shapes Us podcast. I ran into you at Rampage. I remember it was 2 days before the women's event. And I just remember walking by and being like, oh my God, this is Kate Courtney.
Hype girl, reporting for duty.
Yeah, just like, okay, it's real. Hey, this event is real. Kate Courtney's here. Like, I know we've been talking about it's a big deal that it's the first ever women's Rampage, but like seeing you there, it got me extra hyped. I'm like, okay, this is big. And it's about time.
It was amazing. Like, when I heard that was finally happening, I called my athlete rep immediately and was like, can I please be there? I want to go and support however I can. And I think, to me, it was amazing on a few fronts. Like, obviously being the first to do anything is crazy, but I think as an athlete in the bike space, a very different kind of bike, I had to keep reminding people when I was there. They're like, oh, are you going to do it next year? Like, please. I'll go up the hill. But I think I have this perspective on like what that emotional process is like to push that edge, right? So we're at a World Cup, we have a new feature, and for us, it's like even doing a drop or a jump that's new is really scary, right? And we have skills
and
coaches.
For context, this is in your incredible world of cross country.
In cross country, so I know what that feels like to show up and try it the first time. But the difference is that I get to watch like 20 other people do it. It's like for sure going to work. It's tried and true. It's tested. I can follow my skills coach off it. I can watch a few other people do it and have time to practice it before game day. And what was really remarkable to me is with Rampage, they have to have this creative mind to see lines where they don't exist. And then to have the courage to like be the first one to drop and to have that self-confidence and that ability to kind of just commit to something that you believe is amazing to me. And in a bigger picture where I think, for me as an athlete, when I went, like I was so nervous because as a female athlete, like your whole career, you kind of know there's going to be this like, there's a potential for if they crashed or something went wrong that people would say, oh, see, they weren't ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they felt about that. And I'm sure they've had the opportunity to speak. I saw a big article in the New York Times. So There has been some great coverage and they can speak to that experience. And
it was so cool.
I know they were ready. Right. And they knew they were ready. But there was this part where the courage it takes to be the first one to drop on something that's never been done, where you're kind of like riding for women everywhere. Like, I just thought that was the most badass thing ever. And I just wanted to be there to see it. So
that's so cool. What was the takeaways for you, like, that you were able to take and apply for yourself?
I think it was really inspiring to see that from the other side. And I think, to me, it's a great reminder of what this moment in women's sports means. I think it's great that, we have this big movement. Women are getting paid more. Women's teams are, breaking out. They're getting a lot more press. They're getting a lot of focus. But to me, the value of that beyond its impact on these individual sports is like, it changes your view of what's possible. And for me, that's what I felt there. I didn't want to go do any 50-foot gaps, but I saw that and thought, man, I can be a little braver. I can be a little stronger. I can push the edge a little more.
Right.
And that is what I hope every little girl who watches any of these sports that are going to this crazy level now feels when they watch it.
Kate Courtney, free ride, mountain bike.
You heard it here first.
On the What Shapes Us podcast, folks.
It's not my
no more cross country.
Strengths and weaknesses.
Sending 80-footers.
Send me uphill. Send me uphill.
Yeah. Obviously, much has been made of your. You have a very unique and rooted story in mountain biking, in the way you grew up, your relationship with your dad. You grew up in the birthplace of mountain biking, and you took to it in a way that was like tenacious.
Thank you.
What was the thing, man, outside of like the nurture that you had in in where you grew up, but what was it for you that you were like, yeah, this is where I live?
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about that because I really did, like, when I raced a bike the first time, feel that this is for me. And it was this home for my competitive spirit. And I think there are a lot of elements to that, but one of them was I grew up doing all kinds of different sports. I played soccer, I rode horses, I ski raced, I did gymnastics, I did a bunch of different things. And I was never very good, but I always was like trying the hardest, which
Right.
is kind of a lethal combo because at least if you weren't trying, you would have that lever to pull. Like for me, it was like, she's got hustle, but like it's not adding up to much. And I feel like when I found endurance sports, first running, but then really with mountain biking and cycling in general, I found like a home for my superpower. It was like suddenly, if I could try hard
Mhm.
and do the training week over week, day over day, month over month, year over year, I saw this progress and it felt like that thing that was very innate in me, like that desire to push, that desire to find the edge, to try hard and see what's possible. Like suddenly I had runway.
Right.
And I feel like that, yeah, it was just a magical kind of transition for me and it became immediately like the key sport that I wanted to do.
When I think about your career, especially when I first met you,
Mhm.
you were like, you were rocket shipping in a way where like the engines are just like, just, right?
Yeah.
You also, the manner in which you developed your riding, I think is interesting because I think it was 2012, 2013 when you get sponsored.
Yeah. Right around there.
And at the same time, you start going to Stanford
Yeah.
for human biology,
Yeah.
which is super normal, by the way.
Super normal.
When like, hey, by the way, Specialized just like put me on. And also I think I'm going to stay the course and get my degree at Stanford in human biology.
I think at the time it wasn't really a choice. I was a U23 racer and I was super consistent during my U23 years, but I was racing World Cups. I was kind of, the 4 years I was eighth, fourth, second, and then won the overall. So I got a little better every year.
Right.
But when you're eighth in the world in U23, it's not a full time career.
Right.
And I think for me,
So that's the gap.
there's a big gap between getting to where it's a sustainable career. And I think there was a big gap in American women's cycling. Like there were a few women, Georgia Gould, Leah Davison, ahead of me that I really looked up to and learned from, but they were quite a bit older than me. And most of them, either went pro later, started in college. Like there wasn't a huge clear pathway from high school racing to the top step of the podium in a World Cup. And so I
It
didn't
was very
necessarily
European dominant.
very European dominated. And so it's not that I thought it wasn't possible, but it wasn't like a clear trajectory.
Right. So let me yes and this.
Let me yes and yeah. And I think as I went through school and I saw those consistent gains, it goes to that mindset we talked about. It's eighth, fourth, second. Maybe I could win. You win. Okay, now I move to elite. Like those steps, it wasn't clear what the next step would be until you were right there. And I couldn't have said, okay, from here I'm going to go like up, up, up. I just knew, okay, I want to make that jump to fourth next year. And by the time I graduated college, it was clear, okay, I think it's possible that I could win at the elite level and I want to try. And now I've earned the opportunity to try. I've earned a spot on a pro team where I'm paid enough to have a tiny apartment and give it a whirl. And I think for me, it was really a gift to actually have that slow kind of ramp up. And I say now, for better or for worse, the path from high school mountain bike racing in the US to being an elite World Cup racer on the podium, it's now a bit more of a well-worn path, right? There's a handful of women that have been able to do that and shown that that's possible. And it's almost a gift and a curse for our high school racers, because for me, I didn't feel the pressure that was what I had to do. And there was a timeline, and, this person did it on this date and they were this old and they won this race. Yeah. And for sure, if that had been right ahead of me, that's how I would have thought about it in high school.
Yeah, there's some poor young women out there who are like, do you want to be Kate Courtney or not?
Huh? Not just me. Like, I think I'm just as proud to see that there's now like 4 or 5 women who are really in the top 10, and it's totally possible. And I think that will produce much better, stronger, and deeper American fields in the future and for many generations to come. But I think for me, it was like this interesting mindset trick and gift to not feel that was something I had to do, or that I should do, or that there was some timeline. It felt like, man, it was like my secret hope, right? My secret goal. And it didn't feel really even within reach until I graduated school and had that full-time contract and got to spend the time trying to make that jump.
The performances that you had on the back end of graduating, like you went on a tear.
I had a little step up.
You went, you were in the zone, you went unconscious, you just went on a winning spree. What was that window like? I think it was like 2018 to like 2020, 21?
Yeah, probably like 2017. I won the U23 World Cup overall, and that was a pretty big breakout year for me. I won elite nationals. I missed the Olympic team in 2016, like pretty narrowly. And I think that was a pretty big motivator for me to really step up in 2017. And I started working with Jim Miller, a new coach at that time. So I kind of stepped up and really was able to focus more on my training, even in 2017 when I was kind of at the tail end of school. But yeah, 2018, I had a really consistent season. I did the Cape Epic, won the Cape Epic.
Shout out to South Africa.
Shout out.
Anytime anyone mentions an accomplishment in South Africa on this podcast, it's a very big deal.
We get a shout out.
It's a very big deal.
I'm going in January.
Are you?
Talk
Awesome.
about that later.
Okay.
But yeah, I had a really consistent season and was kind of just, again, like making that progress. Like, I think my world champs win at the end of the season came by surprise for a lot of people. But for the people that were like really in my corner, it's like I had been just knocking on the door. It's like I was in 3rd in a race 2 weeks before, and then I got a flat. And then I was in 5th, and then, I like dropped back a little bit. And then finally in that race, like all these pieces that I had been learning all year kind of came together, and I was able to take the win in that race, which obviously was one of the biggest in my career. And then I feel like I had this feeling of like, I have the formula. This is amazing. Like, I love doing this. I love how the training feels, and I love the process of it, and it's really working. And so I think I just kind of doubled down the next year. And that was 2019 was definitely my most successful year. I made it, won the World Cup overall, had quite a few World Cup wins and rainbows, which was pretty special. And was ranked first in the world going into the old pandemic that we dealt with. And that's kind of, I would say I haven't been at that level since that time, but we're working to get back there.
That's an incredible run in any sport. Like, I'm going to use the D word. You don't have to use it. I'm going to use the D word. You were dominant. You were dominant in a way that transcended the sport. Like, your name goes past just the cross country and mountain bike world, and people are like, this is Kate Courtney. She's one of the best athletes in the world. She's done this thing as an American to sort of break a ceiling for what it looks like for American women to perform and just Americans as a whole. And then, like you said, the pandemic happens, and we all go through it in different ways. Right? You're in a silo in the manner you're still training and tenaciously. I remember like the amount of content that you were putting out, like just being training. You were on some like, listen, I'm on some stay ready to be ready for when the world opens up. But I wonder what it's like, when you now have expectation, outside expectation, in a way that didn't exist before. That can be sponsor expectation, that can be media, that can be now like a fame that you suddenly have, where you're like, oh wow. How have you been able to adjust to and stay with it these last few years, where you're still doing well, but it hasn't been that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the pandemic piece. I think it affected different athletes differently. I mean, it affected all of us differently. And, I'll acknowledge at the top of this that there's many people who are much more affected by it than I was, right? For all intents and purposes,
it's all relative.
It's all relative, but it
was a terrible time.
It was a terrible time. It was a great time in some ways.
Right.
We were all kind of forced to reassess in a way that I think was healthy in many ways, and kind of rally around what's important. And for me, it was the first year since I was 16 that I didn't travel all year, right? Going to races. So there were some kind of silver lining, important pieces of it. But I think for me, it hit kind of at the worst possible time in my athletic career, because I was ranked first, qualified for the Olympics, pre-qualified. So I went into 2020 pre-qualified and really focused on only one race.
Right.
And interestingly enough, by March, the work for that is done. So all of the media tour for the Olympics, which was huge that year, was done by March. All of that base training, it was done by March. I said my strategy was okay, we're gonna have a kind of a white period where any media that's important I do, then a gray period where it starts to narrow down, and then a blackout where I don't do any media.
Shut it down.
Focus
on
the race.
You're locked in.
So we got through all the hard parts, and then the part where you're about to fly the plane was shut down.
No planes are flying.
No planes are flying.
The world's shut down in the middle of your gray area.
And so for me, I ended up basically just trying to stay ready, as you said. They kept moving the races 6 weeks at a time, which in hindsight, if I had just, I think the stress levels were pretty high around that for me. If I had just been okay, this is not going to happen, take a year and do something else, that would have been way better for me. But instead, it was double down, reset, double down. And I think I just got tired. It was just such I couldn't stay on that edge for as long as I was asked to stay on that edge. And I think when we emerged from COVID, towards the end of the year, we started racing, and I went, and to be honest, I was pretty strong for having not raced at all. I was 6th in the 2 World Cups we had. Then I got sick. Then I got a concussion at World. So I was strong, but I kind of had nothing to show for that year. Right. So it added to that feeling of okay, I'm supposed to be better than this. Right. And you then went back into the media circus of okay, since we didn't use the 2020 media, let's do it again. And so it's for 2 years as being asked to sustain this story of you're the best in the world. And that's not a super fun story to sustain. It's really fun to try to do that. It's really fun when you can do that on a day. But at the end of the day, our sport has so many variables, and to win is the exception, not the rule. Right. It's when everything comes together. And so I think that was a really challenging period for me. And I was able, in 2021, Olympics did not go to plan. I was able to be stable in a lot of those races, but I wasn't able to find the edge that I had hoped to have. And I think a lot of that was related just to that experience of those 2 years of kind of being too close to this edge, trying to sustain this story, and feeling that outside pressure and that outside narrative, right? That stopped matching my experience of reality.
You stay tenacious. Your tenacity is really one of the features that makes you, I think that makes people really a fan of you. How do you maintain the tenacity and still have that tenacity with the joy of loving the thing?
The joy. Yeah, that's it for me. It's that where hard work and joy meet is the piece that I think when I can get those two things in balance, that's when I'm unleashed as an athlete. And I think a lot of that actually comes from some of the reflection I did around the Olympics, right? Is like what was so alluring about that as a goal? Like what is driving me in those moments, like push so hard? And I think for me, it's like a little bit of the cliche answer of like the peak helps you ensure that you get the most out of yourself on the journey. And that it is the tenacity, it's the going for it, it's the committing, it's the trying that really matters the most. And I think, we all like can have that self-reflection of whether there is that desire in you. And for me, as long as I have that, like I have to compete and I have to see how good I can be.
Yeah. Did that experience at the first Olympics and that reflection sort of, how did that inform the way you showed up for Paris?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a different approach for me. So I ended up in 2023, halfway through the season. I ended up changing coaches. So I think it was kind of one of those moments where what got me here won't get me there. And I think we had kind of exhausted the plan and the playbook that we were using. And for a very long time, my response to that, like not seeing those results tick up, was, okay, I need to like try harder and execute better. I need to like become more narrow in my focus and more refined in my execution. And like to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like that will always be my answer. Like I need to try harder. And I think it got to a point where I realized like, oh, this is never going to work. Like I need to try different. Yeah.
That's a sobering realization in a athlete coach relationship, especially one where there's an intimacy,
of course,
in what coaching looks like at World Cup. I mean, just give some context to what the coach's role is.
Well, coach in mountain biking, like there's a lot of different types of coaches.
Yeah.
There's the skills coach. There's someone who helps with strength and conditioning coaching. There's the person, I would say like the head coach. That's usually what I'm talking about, is the person who like writes your cycling plan.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways that can work. I primarily worked with a coach who was remote. So like wasn't at the races, but was absolutely in very close contact with me and talking on the phone and, updating things really regularly. And I think at a certain point, like sometimes you just need a change and
need some different.
I think what made that coaching relationship work really well, I worked with Jim Miller for a very long time, and he was the coach who was coaching me when I had those stellar years. So it's hard to move away from that, of course. But I think we were really aligned in the way that we think about things, right? So he pushed me in the way that I like to be pushed, right? And I think that worked really exceptionally well for that first rise in my career, right? Where I'm like, it was the doubling down approach where it's like suddenly the things that I'm really good at, I have a coach who can uniquely structure those things and help me like build that engine and help me tick this consistent progress. And I think at a certain point, like those tools weren't really working for a variety of reasons. And between 2021 and 2023, as you said at the beginning, like they weren't terrible years, right? Like I've been consistently in the top, I would say very consistently between like 9th and 15th place, right? For 3 years.
Yeah.
Which is not bad. Like it takes a lot of work to be one of the top 15 cyclists in the world, right? Yeah. But it's not necessarily where you want to stay. And
also when you've been there.
And when you've been at the
I have the keys to that house. I've walked around in that yard. I know that's my living room.
So for me, like it was that kind of stagnancy feeling of like I'm not making progress and I don't have the keys to the house anymore. Like we need to, the locks have been changed.
Yeah.
That caused me to really think about making a change. And I ended up through a course of many events, like connecting with a coach that had a totally different approach. And I think was the really right person at the right time to start on this kind of like next part of my career, which is the try different part, in which, things are looking a little bit different.
I think it's really cool that you had the awareness to say, like, yes, this is kumbaya and we think the same, but I actually need some friction.
Yeah.
I need some friction. I need someone who's going to like maybe push up against me a bit in order to get to where I need.
Oh, yeah. So to get back to your question about Paris, like I made that change at a time when if you were really putting all your eggs in the Paris basket, like that's not the smartest. That's a little bit of a roll of the dice.
Right.
Let's say it that way. And I think there's a huge part of me that was like, I can still be at the top and just like, we'll make these changes in the fall and we'll be like ready to go for that race. And I think from the very beginning, my new coach, Barry, was like, oh, okay, that can be a goal, but like, let's be honest about where we are. Like this is year one of a big build.
This is new.
And we ended up, the way the qualification worked this year is it was really the first 2 World Cups in Brazil. And I was top 10 in both of them, and I was the 3rd American. So it was it was solid, but it wasn't enough to make the team. And I knew that very early in the season. Like those 2 races, it was locked.
Yeah.
The positions for the Olympics were locked. And I think that was, again, really challenging. That's a failure to achieve a goal that I really wanted to achieve. But what's been really interesting about it is I almost feel like I'm like learning, I'm like getting a message, right? Of like, I've been in results purgatory where it's good enough that you're close and you're so close and you know it's possible and you have to keep solving the problem in different ways. But I have not gotten basically the external reward of an exciting result, right? Like uniquely for the Olympics, more so than even a World Cup or a world title. That's the thing that like people from middle school know means you're good at your sport. Do you know what I mean? It's like the thing that like random folks you run into at the grocery store, they're like, oh, you're going to Paris? You must be good, right? And so it's...
Oh, you're not going to Paris?
Oh, you must be terrible. Which to be honest, like that was this really interesting experience for me where I was like, I'm actually like not as far off as it feels. Like I am performing well, but it's not like lighting my soul on fire. And there are still changes that need to be made in order to make that jump. And that's why I said it was supposed to be the year of breakout in my mind. And it was the year of diagnostics, which is through that struggle of like, okay, I'm 10th. Oh, what do I have to do to move up?
Right.
What do I have to do to move up? You start to look at, you're willing to make changes, painful changes that are required, not just to like get the one-off result. Like I'm actually really glad I have not had the one-off thing that kind of like rewarded me and made me feel good enough that I might not make the changes.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It takes a little bit of that struggle to really reckon with like where you're at dead ends and you need to turn around and like where you need to find like a new exit.
That's powerful because that's a really big part of life as well. Like when you decide like, okay, I don't want these outcomes anymore. Who can come with the thing? What's the least path of least resistance to be a new person? It doesn't exist. Yeah. You've got to make incremental change every day in order for somewhere down the line to be like, oh, this is actually who I am. Yeah. But it doesn't feel that way for a long time, and it's frustrating, and I couldn't imagine, and that's life, but this is also front facing in a way where people don't really have the patience for what you're talking about. You know, like, what do you mean? Girl, I'm trying to see you on the podium.
100%. And I do think like it's through that confluence of all those factors, like 10th for me, 15th for me, it's objectively like a good World Cup result.
Right.
Like you are 10th in the world.
Yeah.
But as someone who rose to the top in such a visible fashion and stayed there for a little while, that's not an exciting result. You might like they're like, oh, where'd she go? She's disappeared. right? You're not visible on the podium. And I think it's been this like twin journey that I think has been really valuable for me of forcing me to make the changes I need to make to get to the next level. And what I view as the next level is like, I'm not going to race forever. Like I have kind of a time bound, next 5-ish years of my career, like LA 28, obviously on the horizon.
Come on, let's
That's
go.
a great capstone.
Let's go.
But like really my goal is always to like race through around then, maybe 1 year longer. And like, these are the changes that are going to ensure that I know that I gave 100% of my capacity and what I have to give to the sport. And that is actually what I'm after in this phase of my career. Like, I want to know that I found out how good I could be, and then I can accept it and move on. Right. Yeah. And that's something no one else can tell you. You can only find that within yourself. Like, if you feel that feeling that, yeah, but I still think more is possible, or there's like a missing link here, or there's something we haven't looked at or tried, like that's what haunts you. So I am grateful that I am like really in the like trenches of high performance on that. Right. And then on this identity side, when you're not getting that like positive feedback and that kind of like image of yourself as the winning champion athlete, it forces you to like get very clear about what matters to you and what success looks like and feels like. Right. And I think this period of my career, I still want to win races. Like, that is the goal. But I also believe I'm capable of a more multidimensional definition of success. And I think actually when you can define that success for yourself in the process, in all these other ways to add value to the sport, in contributing massively to like support for the next generation, like those types of things, they actually make the outcomes more likely as well, because you show up as a more whole, powerful, connected person with a lot more tools in your toolbox.
What is it like being a top tier women's athlete at this time when we're seeing, obviously the incredible run of transcendence into like daily conversation of the WNBA? I look at someone like Ilana Maher, in who, women's rugby, and now she's just like, yes, women's rugby.
She's here.
She's
here. Arrived.
Yeah. I just saw that Women's Pro Lacrosse League announced. Obviously, the dominance that we're seeing of these young women in professional skateboarding and surfing to the next level. This is the time. At Rampage, the t-shirts, everyone was wearing them. Everyone watches women's sports. What is this time like to be a part of this particular movement where women's sports is not a side conversation? It's
the main conversation.
Yeah, it really is.
It's everywhere. It's amazing. I think I always think about my mom, actually, when I think about this, because my mom talks about being in high school when Title IX passed in 1972, I think. I hope I'm right on that. In the 70s.
Yeah. In the far ways, yes. In the 1900s.
No, it was pretty recently.
Yes.
That Title IX passed, and that girls were mandated to be given the opportunity to participate in high school sports. And my mom remembers, your
mom was in a world where that was not allowed.
Exactly. So she was in a world where from one day to the next, like, she didn't have as many opportunities to participate. And then suddenly she had more sports teams that she could join and more things that she could try. And, I saw her generation and so many like incredible female leaders that we've had that have like pushed so hard to give women the opportunity to participate. And what I think we see now is that women are not here to participate. They're here to dominate. Yeah. And like, that is the next evolution, which is, it's not just about being on the start line. It's about producing equivalent, exciting, dynamic, competitive events that people really want to watch and support. And I think that have huge value beyond the individual sport and just like communicating women's value in general and like what is possible when you push the edge and you show up to do a little more than just show up.
Yeah. I remember, and I was ignorant to this fact. It was, I think, the first woman who ran in the Boston Marathon.
It's like remarkably recent.
Yeah,
right?
like in the like late 60s, early 70s, and there are photos and footage of men physically pushing her, like to not be in, like physically assaulting this woman, challenging her very presence. How dare she be running in this race with them?
Yeah.
And that's
crazy.
That was yesterday.
It's not that long ago. And not only that, like back to the sports science conversation, there were comments that like women would basically combust if they did that, right? That it wasn't just we don't want you to.
I'm laughing at the absurdity
it's
and
true.
like the length that men will go to be like, but no, I mean they'll literally they'll just explode. Like they can't do that.
They can't. It's not possible. So yeah, I mean it's amazing. Kind of back to our Rampage comment, like it takes real courage to be the first to say, yeah, we're going to do this. And I think hopefully sometime soon, it'll just be sports with like a men's and a women's version, and both will be valued and supported and watched. And they'll have some differences and it'll be great. But I think right now we're seeing this kind of big push to like, why aren't we there yet?
Right.
And it's really exciting and it's amazing. And I think it's a great time to be watching and investing in women's sports because it's only going up.
I love that the era, by the way, that was a mic drop. Heavy mic drop. I love that the era of waiting or asking for permission is over.
Yeah.
And the demanding and the taking up of space, whether or not you like it or not, is happening, because that's the only way that change happens.
Completely.
On the Los Angeles tip, I do have the anticipation of LA Olympics. That's a pretty nice roadmap.
Pretty nice target.
You got to participate in probably the coolest Olympic announcement for a city ever. In that you got the Olympic flag passed to you by some dude named Tom Cruise. Like,
a little wild life experience there.
What? How did that happen? First of all, the fact that like it was full on. It's actually like par for the course for LA that we had to have like a full on Mission Impossible type.
Yeah.
Feels
right.
Tom Cruise jumping out of a plane, motorcycling in France, jumping out of a plane with the flag. Like, okay, of course, Tom Cruise, not go off. But then like, hey, Kate Courtney, could you get down with this?
It's pretty amazing. So I got asked to be a part of the Olympic handoff of the flag. And at the time, I didn't have a ton of information about it. They just, they reached out to my agent. They said, we're looking for an American Olympian who's a female athlete and is in an up and coming sport and has some tie to California. And it's like, okay, well, I grew up here. The sport of mountain biking was invented in my home area. So it all kind of lined up that I was picked for the opportunity.
Yeah,
which was a huge one.
Yeah,
it was great, and
it all lined up. And you're like, of course, yeah.
I'm like, I would be honored to be involved. But at this point, I had no idea what it actually was. Yeah. You're kind of like, okay, you need to be in LA for 2 shoots. I'm like, okay, probably make that. And a couple days before the first shoot, they're like, we need to talk to you. And they kept saying like, oh, there'll be some like A-list celebrities. And you're like, oh, okay, A-list celebrities. Who knows what that means, right? This can be a range.
Yes.
And they're like, we need you to first sign this NDA, and then we're going to tell you, we just need you to know so you're not too surprised, like who the A-list. And I immediately was like, you're going to need to get my husband an NDA immediately.
Right.
Because I am going to need to talk to someone about this.
Yeah.
But so I had to like sit on that information. I went down here.
When you got the information, I want to know what the response was.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like
how did it go? Tell me, like they call you and they're like, okay.
I'm like, oh wow, yeah, we're at the top of the A-list here, baby.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be like a
him.
basic A-list,
Yeah,
but they said
of him.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and it just, to me, it was like, I think as athletes, like, and just as people in general, when you're in the public eye, like you always had this kind of like imposter syndrome feeling. And that actually totally changed my mindset where I'm like, this is just cool.
Right.
This is something like, why wouldn't I say yes to this? Why wouldn't I like just enjoy this experience and like be a part of something that's super exciting, super cool. And that means something to me. Like it really means something to me that the Olympics are going to be in my home state, in my home country, in the time that I live here and I'm alive on planet Earth. Like that's a pretty big deal. That doesn't happen all the time. And I think it was so absurd that it was like, oh, I just have to enjoy this and like enjoy this opportunity and really, let it be like a fun life experience that by choice and chance I've been able to be a part of.
Done a couple of right things to be in that moment. Was Tom cool?
Super cool. Yeah. He's a professional. You know, I think it was a really amazing experience. I think it's always great to be able to watch people do what they do. Mm-hmm. And obviously this was like a smaller segment. This was not as crazy as the normal stunts that he's pulling off. But I think for me, the coolest part of it was just seeing how joyful he was about the entire experience. And, you know, he like flew over, was on an overnight flight. Like there's some elements of any lifestyle taken to the max, like the lifestyle of an athlete, the lifestyle of being a movie star.
Yeah.
Like it sounds great. Like a few of the pieces of it are really like things that people want, right? They want that attention. They want that name recognition. But really like a lot of the day-to-day is probably very challenging of being that recognized and also like doing that much work, like flying around, being on set. Like it's exhausting.
I think it's oxygen for him.
It's oxygen for him. And to me, I was like, wow, that's a lesson is like when you find the thing that is oxygen to you.
Right.
Like that's the thing. And I remember saying on set, I was like, wow, this is fun. And he said, it's all fun, isn't it? And I was like, for you to say that when you're on this kind of small, like you're just handing me the flag. It's not like a huge scene. It's, you know, he's like filming Mission Impossible. There's like a lot else going on and fatigue is probably high. And I would imagine he just wanted to kind of get that done and get out of there. Like to have that element of it's all fun. Like it's all for fun. It's all because we love it. Like that actually had a huge impact on me. And mountain biking is my oxygen. And so I think it's important to remember that and to remember that mindset is also a choice.
Kate Courtney. Listen, I knew that you were going to bring it, but you overbrought it to the What Shapes Us podcast. The depths of how grateful I am, it's uncharted. Thank you for sharing and opening up and giving, you know, your journey. There's just so many opportunities for people to be like, ooh, I know what that frequency is in life. I might not be racing, you know, World Cups all over the world, but I identify that space and can take something away from it for my life, which is, you know, the goal I have for these conversations.
Well, you're really good at translating that. So it's
ma'am,
sit down and spend some time with you.
I'm just a conduit who's here to listen, occasionally hold up a mirror, and hopefully make people feel comfortable enough to share. But yeah,
you got the cozy couch. So
we got a nice couch and some vibes. But you're busy. You were training all day today, and then you got in your car and you came to hang out with me, and I am just immensely grateful. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
And we'll do it again. And good luck.
Thank you. It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, you got this.
Thanks.